Some say the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. The corner office on the 38th floor stood silent except for the sound of rain against glass. Boston's financial district glittered below like a kingdom built on promises. Inside, a woman's trembling hands clutched two items, divorce papers in her left hand, and in her right, something far more dangerous, the truth. 25 years of marriage, $3 billion in corporate value, one brilliant mind whose ideas had been silently claimed by another. They say success has many fathers, but some empires are built on stolen blueprints. Some marriages collapse not from infidelity, but from the slow, steady erosion of identity. And sometimes it takes staring death in the face to finally see what's been standing right before you. In the reflection of floor-to-ceiling windows, she barely recognized herself anymore. The woman who'd once been someone's equal had become invisible in her own life. Tonight, that would change. Tonight, everything would. The rain hit the windows of the Morgan estate with an insistence that matched Catherine's mood. From her vantage point in the study, the Boston skyline glittered beyond the rain-blurred glass, the Prudential and Hancock Towers standing like sentinels over a life she no longer recognized as her own. Catherine Morgan. Kate, to those who truly knew her, sat at her antique cherrywood desk, staring at the legal documents spread before her. After 25 years of marriage, it had come to this 12 pages of legalese that would dissolve the union between Catherine Morgan, née Sullivan, and Richard Edward Morgan. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 9, its deep resonance echoing through the cavernous Victorian townhouse in Back Bay. $3 million when they'd bought it in 2001. $12 million now, according to their last appraisal. Kate absently wondered which one of them would keep it. Or would they sell it, divide the proceeds, and watch as strangers moved into the space where they'd raised their daughter? Her fingers traced the embossed letterhead of Whitfield and Associates, their family attorney for over 2 decades. Thomas had seemed genuinely pained when she'd requested the divorce papers, his usually impassive face betraying a flash of emotion. "Are you certain, Kate?" he'd asked. After all these years, she hadn't answered immediately. Was anyone ever certain about ending a quarter-century of shared history? But then she'd thought of the empty conversations, the parallel lives, the growing chasm between her and Rich that had become too wide to bridge with weekend getaways or expensive anniversary gifts. "Yes," she'd finally said. "I'm certain." The house phone rang, startling her from her reverie. Kate let it go to voicemail. Not in the mood for whoever might be calling at this hour. Probably one of Rich's business associates, unaware that he was working late. Again, her cell phone vibrated on the desk, a text from Olivia. "Did you talk to Dad yet?" Kate sighed. Their 22-year-old daughter, currently taking a gap year from Harvard to work at a tech startup in San Francisco, had an uncanny ability to sense tension between her parents, even from 3,000 miles away. "Not yet. He's still at the office." The response came immediately. "It's 9 p.m. on a Friday." "Mom, of course he is." Kate could almost hear the eye roll accompanying the text. There was no judgment in Olivia's tone, just resignation. Richard Morgan's devotion to Morgan Venture Partners had been a constant in their family life for as long as Olivia could remember. Kate tucked the divorce papers into a manila envelope and slipped it into her leather briefcase, a Christmas gift from Rich 5 years ago, monogrammed with her initials. KSM, Catherine Sullivan Morgan, soon to be just Catherine Sullivan again. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. She stood, smoothing the wrinkles from her charcoal pencil skirt. At 53, Kate still maintained the disciplined figure of her younger years, a combination of good genetics and the rigid exercise regimen she'd adopted after Olivia left for college. Her honey blonde hair, now expertly colored to conceal the gray, was pulled back in a sleek chignon, emphasizing her high cheekbones and clear blue eyes. "Mirror, mirror," she murmured to her reflection in the antique mirror by the door. Who was this woman staring back at her Harvard MBA, class of '95, former rising star at Wellington Capital? Mother, wife, and now, soon-to-be divorcee. Kate grabbed her raincoat and car keys. Rich wouldn't be home for hours, and she was tired of waiting. If Muhammad wouldn't come to the mountain. The underground parking garage at Morgan Venture Partners was nearly empty when Kate pulled her Audi into a visitor space. Only a few cars remained. She recognized Rich's black Tesla and Victoria Spencer's silver Mercedes. Of course, Victoria would be working late with Rich. His second-in-command had been a fixture at MVP for 15 years. Her loyalty to Rich and the company unwavering. The security guard at the reception desk looked up in surprise as Kate strode through the lobby, her heels clicking authoritatively on the marble floor. "Mrs. Morgan didn't expect to see you tonight." "Hello, Dave. My husband's still upstairs." "Yes, ma'am. Shall I call up and let him know you're here?" "No need. I'll surprise him." Dave nodded and swiped his security card, allowing Kate access to the executive elevator. "Have a good evening, Mrs. Morgan." The ride to the 38th floor gave Kate a moment to collect herself. What exactly was she planning to do? Walk into Rich's office, toss the divorce papers on his desk, and walk out? The scenario seemed melodramatic, something from a bad movie, but then, hadn't their marriage become something of a performance these past few years? Rich, the brilliant entrepreneur, and Kate, the supportive wife, playing their roles to perfection at charity galas and business dinners. The elevator doors opened silently, revealing the darkened reception area of Morgan Venture Partners. Only a few lights remained on, illuminating the company logo on the far wall, a stylized phoenix rising from flames, with the motto "From Insight to Impact" curving beneath it. Kate had been present when Rich chose that logo, back when MVP was just a fledgling consulting firm operating out of a converted warehouse in Cambridge. She remembered suggesting the phoenix imagery, symbolic of transformation and rebirth. Rich had loved it immediately. "That's it, Kate. That's exactly what we do, help companies transform and emerge stronger." Had he credited her for the idea when the design firm asked? She couldn't remember. It was one of countless conversations where her insights had blended seamlessly with his vision, the boundaries between their intellectual contributions blurring into a shared creation. Light spilled from beneath Rich's office door at the end of the corridor. Kate moved toward it, her footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. She was about to knock when she heard voices, Rich and Victoria, their tones urgent. "We need to move up the timeline. Rich, Bennett's getting impatient." "I know, Vic, but the SEC filing has to be perfect. We can't afford any red flags now." "What about Kate? Have you told her?" There was a pause, and Kate leaned closer to the door. "Not yet. I'm working on it. It's complicated." Victoria's voice softened. "Rich, you're running out of time. Dr. Feldman said." "I know what Feldman said." Rich snapped, then sighed. "Sorry, I need to handle this my way." "Fine, but the asset transfer needs to happen before things go public. For her protection as much as yours." "I'll take care of it. Did you set up the offshore account like we discussed?" "It's done. Cayman Islands. Untraceable. The documents are in the safe. Code's the same." Kate's heart pounded against her ribs. Asset transfer, offshore accounts, SEC filings. What was Rich involved in, and who was Bennett? She stepped back from the door, mind racing. This wasn't the conversation she'd expected to overhear. Instead of a workaholic husband and his dedicated colleague burning the midnight oil on a legitimate business matter, she'd stumbled upon what sounded suspiciously like financial impropriety, or worse. Kate retreated down the hallway, slipping into Rich's executive assistant's office. Jennifer's computer was off, but her desk offered a perfect view of Rich's door while keeping Kate hidden. She settled into the chair to wait, her briefcase with the divorce papers suddenly forgotten. 20 minutes later, Victoria emerged from Rich's office. The striking brunette looked exhausted, dark circles visible beneath her eyes even from Kate's vantage point. Victoria paused at Rich's door. "Don't wait too long. Rich, Kate deserves to know." Then she was gone, her heels clicking toward the elevator. Kate waited until she heard the elevator doors close before emerging from her hiding place. Whatever Rich was involved in, it sounded serious and potentially illegal. The divorce papers could wait. This required a different conversation entirely. She approached Rich's door again, but before she could knock, it swung open. Rich stood there, his tall frame silhouetted against the light from his office, looking startled to find his wife in the corridor. "Kate, what are you doing here?" At 55, Richard Morgan was still a handsome man. His dark hair had silvered at the temples, giving him a distinguished appearance that business magazines often commented on in their profiles. His face showed the lines of stress and responsibility, but his hazel eyes remained sharp and penetrating. Tonight, however, those eyes held something Kate hadn't seen before. Fear. "I came to talk," she said, keeping her voice neutral. "But it seems you might have something to tell me first." Rich's expression shifted, a careful mask of confusion replacing the momentary panic. "What do you mean?" "I heard you and Victoria talking about asset transfers and offshore accounts, about someone named Bennett who's getting impatient." Kate stepped closer. "And about some deadline from Dr. Feldman. What's going on?" "Rich." The color drained from Rich's face. He glanced down the empty corridor, then gestured for her to enter his office. "Come inside, please." Kate stepped into the familiar space, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Boston Harbor and the financial district. The office spoke of power and success, leather furniture, original artwork, and the wall of awards and recognition that charted MVP's meteoric rise in the consulting world. Rich closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly looking much older than his 55 years. "How much did you hear? Enough to know you're hiding something significant, something that apparently affects me?" Kate placed her briefcase on his desk. "I came here tonight to give you these," she said, removing the manila envelope. "But now I think we have more pressing matters to discuss." Rich's eyes fixed on the envelope. "What is that, divorce papers? I had Thomas draw them up last week." The word hung between them, heavy and final. Rich didn't look surprised, just resigned, as if this was one more complication in an already overwhelming situation. "I see," he said quietly. "I suppose it was inevitable." His calm acceptance stung more than any protest would have. Kate had prepared for anger, denial, even pleading, not this quiet resignation. "That's all you have to say. It was inevitable." Rich moved to his desk, sinking into his chair with a weariness that seemed bone deep. "Kate, there's something I need to tell you, something I've been trying to find the right way to say for weeks." Kate remained standing, suddenly afraid of what might come next. "I'm listening." Rich opened his desk drawer and removed a manila folder similar to the one containing their divorce papers. He placed it on the desk between them. "I've been seeing Dr. Feldman for the past 3 months. He's an oncologist at Mass General." The word landed like a physical blow. Kate gripped the edge of his desk. "Oncologist. I have pancreatic cancer. Kate, stage 4. It's metastasized to my liver." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Of all the scenarios Kate had imagined, affairs, financial crimes, midlife crises, this hadn't even made the list. "That's not possible," she heard herself say. "You've been fine, working constantly. I would have noticed if you were sick." Rich gave a bitter laugh. "Would you? We barely see each other." "Kate, I've lost 15 pounds in the last 2 months. I've been getting chemo every Tuesday morning, telling you I had breakfast meetings with clients." The accusation stung because it was true. They had become experts at living separate lives under the same roof, their conversations limited to household logistics and social obligations. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Feldman gives me 12 to 18 months. Maybe less." Kate sank into the chair opposite his desk, the divorce papers forgotten. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was going to. I've been trying to get our affairs in order first." He gestured to the folder he'd placed on the desk. That's what you overheard Victoria's been helping me prepare? Kate reached for the folder with trembling hands. Inside were financial documents, power of attorney forms, living will directives, the administrative architecture of a life preparing for its end. And the offshore accounts, the SEC filings. Rich hesitated, and Kate saw something flicker in his eyes, a calculation, a decision being made. It's complicated, Kate. The company's going through some restructuring. I'm trying to protect our assets before I have to step down. It wasn't the whole truth. Kate had spent 25 years with this man. She knew when he was holding back. But the revelation of his illness had knocked her off balance, making it difficult to focus on anything else. Does Olivia know? Rich shook his head. No one knows except Victoria, Dr. Feldman, and now you. You have to tell her. Rich, she deserves to hear it from you. Not after. Kate couldn't finish the sentence. I know. I will. Sure. He looked at the divorce papers on his desk. Though I suppose this changes things. Kate followed his gaze. Did it? Did a terminal diagnosis erase the years of growing apart, the increasing sense of invisibility she'd felt in her own marriage? Or did it simply add a layer of guilt to an already painful decision? I don't know what this changes, she said honestly. I need time to process this. Rich nodded, then winced slightly, his hand moving to his side in an unconscious gesture. How had she missed the signs? Had she been so absorbed in her own dissatisfaction that she'd failed to notice her husband was dying? There's something else you should know, Rich said. I'm meeting with some investors tonight. They're arriving from Dubai in an hour. Tonight here. Kate checked her watch. It was nearly 10 p.m. They insisted on discretion. It's a sensitive deal. Rich stood, straightening his tie. I need to prepare some documents before they arrive. Can we continue this conversation tomorrow? The familiar pattern reasserted itself, Rich's work taking precedence. Personal matters postponed for a more convenient time. Even now, facing divorce papers and with a terminal diagnosis hanging over him, business came first. Of course, Kate said, gathering her briefcase. We should both get some sleep anyway. It's been a lot to take in. Rich walked her to the door, then hesitated. Kate, about the divorce. Not now. Rich, we'll talk tomorrow. He nodded, looking relieved. Will you be at the house? Where else would I be? The question came out sharper than she'd intended. Right. He stepped back. Good night, Kate. In the elevator, Kate leaned against the wall, emotionally exhausted. Cancer. Her husband was dying of cancer, and he hadn't told her, hadn't trusted her enough to share the burden, or perhaps, more painfully, hadn't needed her enough to seek her support. When the elevator doors opened to the lobby, Kate was surprised to find it empty. Dave, the security guard, was nowhere to be seen. The reception desk was unattended, the computer screens dark. Dave, she called, her voice echoing in the marble lobby. No response. Kate moved toward the exit, an inexplicable sense of unease growing with each step. Outside, the rain had intensified, drumming against the glass doors. She was about to push through to the parking garage when she noticed a black SUV with tinted windows pull up to the building entrance. 3 men in dark suits emerged, moving with the coordinated precision that suggested military or security training. Kate stepped back, her instincts suddenly on high alert. Were these Rich's investors from Dubai? Something about their demeanor felt wrong, too vigilant, too controlled for businessmen. She retreated behind a large decorative pillar as the men entered the lobby. They didn't check in at the security desk but moved directly to the elevator, one of them producing a key card that granted immediate access. Kate waited until they had disappeared into the elevator before rushing to the garage entrance. Something wasn't right, and she needed to get out of the building before figuring out her next move. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet. Kate moved swiftly toward her Audi, keenly aware of the echo of her heels on the concrete. She was fumbling with her key fob when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Dave, the security guard, approaching. Relief flooded her, but only momentarily. Dave's usual friendly expression was gone, replaced by a tense alertness that matched the men from the SUV. Mrs. Morgan, I'm afraid I need you to come with me. What's going on? Dave, please, ma'am. It's for your own safety. His hand moved to his hip, where Kate now noticed the outline of what could only be a concealed weapon. Fear shot through her. This was no ordinary security guard, and those were no ordinary investors upstairs with Rich. I think I left something in my husband's office, she said, forcing a calm she didn't feel. I'll just run back up and... I can't let you do that. Mrs. Morgan. Dave stepped closer. Please come with me. Mr. Bennett wants to speak with you. Bennett, the name from Rich's conversation with Victoria. The man who was getting impatient. Kate's mind raced. She needed to get away. To warn Rich whatever was happening here was far more dangerous than she'd initially thought. She took a step back, her hand closing around the small canister of pepper spray attached to her keychain, a precaution she'd begun carrying after a mugging in the financial district last year. Dave, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going home now. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morgan. That's not an option. As he reached for her arm, Kate raised the pepper spray and pressed the trigger. Dave recoiled with a cry of pain, his hands flying to his face. Kate seized the moment, sprinting toward the garage exit. Heart pounding, she pushed through the door to the street level, emerging into the pouring rain. The black SUV was still parked at the main entrance, which meant she couldn't risk her car. They'd be watching it. Kate ran down the sidewalk, grateful for the late hour and the downpour that kept the streets relatively empty. She had no clear destination in mind, only the urgent need to put distance between herself and whatever dangerous situation was unfolding at MVP. 3 blocks later, soaked to the skin and gasping for breath, Kate ducked into the doorway of a closed coffee shop. Her phone was in her hand before she consciously decided to call Rich. It went straight to voicemail. Rich, it's me. Something's wrong. There are men in the building. One of them is named Bennett. Dave tried to detain me in the garage. I think you're in danger. Call me as soon as you get this. Kate ended the call, her thoughts racing. Who could she turn to? The police and tell them what? That her husband's security guard had acted strangely, that men she'd never met were having a late-night business meeting. She had nothing concrete, just a growing sense of dread. She was about to try Rich again when a car slowed beside her. Kate tensed, ready to run, but the passenger window rolled down to reveal Victoria Spencer's concerned face. Kate, thank God I found you. Get in, quickly. Kate hesitated. Victoria had been part of the conversation about offshore accounts and asset transfers. Could she be trusted? Kate, please, Victoria urged. You're in danger. We both are. I'll explain everything, but not here. A distant shout from down the street made the decision for her. Kate yanked open the car door and slid into the passenger seat. Victoria accelerated away from the curb before Kate had even closed the door. What the hell is going on? Victoria, Kate demanded, fastening her seatbelt. Who are those men? What does Bennett want with me? Victoria navigated through the rain-slicked streets with tense focus. Charles Bennett is a major investor in MVP. He's also the head of a network of shell companies that Rich and I discovered were being used for money laundering. We've been gathering evidence for the SEC, money laundering at MVP. Kate struggled to process this new information. Is that what you meant about asset transfers and offshore accounts? Victoria shot her a quick glance. You really don't know. Do you? Rich hasn't told you anything? He told me he has cancer, stage 4 pancreatic. Victoria's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Did he tell you about the investigation, about the threats? What threats? Bennett found out we were building a case against him? He threatened Rich, threatened you and Olivia too. Victoria turned onto Storrow Drive, heading west out of the city. Rich has been trying to protect you by keeping you in the dark. He thought if you didn't know anything, you'd be safer. Kate stared out at the rain-blurred lights of Boston receding behind them. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, Somewhere Bennett's men won't think to look. They drove in tense silence for nearly 30 minutes, leaving the city behind and entering the suburbs. Kate tried Rich's phone repeatedly, each call going straight to voicemail. Fear gnawed at her. What if Bennett's men had already reached him? Finally, Victoria turned into a modest neighborhood in Cambridge, navigating through tree-lined streets until she pulled up in front of an unremarkable apartment building. "What is this place?" Kate asked as they hurried through the rain to the entrance. "You'll see," Victoria said, producing a key and unlocking the front door. They climbed to the third floor, Victoria leading the way to apartment 3B. She unlocked the door and gestured for Kate to enter. Kate stepped inside and froze. The apartment was small but meticulously maintained and hauntingly familiar. The furniture, the artwork, even the books on the shelves were exact replicas of the first apartment she and Rich had shared after graduating from Harvard Business School. "What is this?" Kate whispered. Victoria closed and locked the door behind them. "Rich bought this building 5 years ago. He converted this unit to match your first apartment exactly. He comes here sometimes, when things get overwhelming." Kate moved through the space in disbelief, touching the worn leather of the sofa, identical to the one they'd bought at a thrift store in 1995. The desk by the window where they'd drafted their first business plans together. The kitchen table where they'd spent countless nights discussing strategy and dreams. "I don't understand," Kate said, turning to Victoria. "Why would he do this?" "Because he never stopped loving you." "Kate, even as your lives grew apart." Victoria moved to the kitchenette, filling an electric kettle. "He needed a place that reminded him of when things were simpler, when you were partners in every sense of the word." Kate sank onto the sofa, overwhelmed. This meticulous recreation of their past felt both touching and unsettling, a shrine to what they'd lost. "You said we're in danger. What exactly is happening?" "Victoria, the full truth this time." Victoria sighed, leaning against the counter as the kettle heated. 3 months ago, Rich discovered financial irregularities in some of MVP's investment portfolios, accounts that Charles Bennett had insisted on managing personally. When Rich dug deeper, he found connections to offshore entities with ties to organized crime and political corruption. "And the cancer, is that part real?" "Yes," Victoria said softly. "The diagnosis came 2 weeks after he discovered Bennett's activities. The timing couldn't have been worse." "So what's the plan?" Kate asked. "Why did Bennett's men come tonight?" "Because the SEC is moving in tomorrow morning. Rich and I have been working with them for weeks, building a case. Bennett must have found out. And Rich is still at the office." Kate stood, panic rising. "We have to help him." "Kate, wait!" Victoria's voice stopped her. "There's more you need to know. About Rich, about MVP, and about your contributions to the company." "What are you talking about?" Victoria moved to the bookshelf and pulled out a thick binder. "Rich keeps these here. The original business plans for MVP, the strategic frameworks that became the foundation of the company." She placed the binder on the coffee table in front of Kate. "Look at them. Really look." Kate opened the binder, finding page after page of handwritten notes, diagrams, and strategic analyses, many in her own handwriting. Ideas they'd developed together during those early years. Concepts they debated over takeout dinners in this very apartment. "I don't understand. Why is this important now?" "Because these frameworks, your frameworks, are what made MVP successful. The Phoenix methodology for corporate transformation. The ethical disruption model. Those were your ideas. Kate, Rich built a $3 billion company using your intellectual architecture." Kate flipped through the pages, memories flooding back. She'd been so involved in those early days, their professional partnership as passionate as their personal one. When had that changed? When had she stepped back, allowing Rich to become the face and voice of what they'd created together? "I chose to stay home when Olivia was born," Kate said, defensive even to her own ears. "That was my decision." "Was it, or did Rich subtly push you toward that choice? Did he ever encourage you to come back, to claim your rightful place as co-creator of MVP's methodologies? The question hit Kate like a physical blow. She remembered Rich's relief when she suggested taking time off after Olivia's birth. His assurances that her career could wait until Olivia was older. The gradual way her temporary absence from the professional world had become permanent. Why are you telling me this now? Victoria sat beside her. Because Bennett isn't just after Rich for exposing his financial crimes. He's using the opportunity to take control of MVP and all its intellectual property, including your unacknowledged contributions. A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. Victoria moved to the peephole, then exhaled in relief. It's Rich. She unlocked the door, and Rich burst in, soaking wet and breathing hard. His eyes found Kate immediately. Thank God you're safe, he gasped, crossing the room to embrace her. When I got your message, Kate stepped back from his touch. Is it true, did you build MVP on my ideas without credit? Rich's expression shifted from relief to resigned sadness. Victoria told you. Answer the question. Rich. He sank onto the couch, suddenly looking every bit the sick man he'd revealed himself to be. It's complicated, in Kate. In the beginning, we developed those ideas together. But yes, as MVP grew, I became the face of the company. The methodologies that made us successful, many of them originated with you. And you never thought to mention that in all these years. You never considered bringing me in formally, acknowledging my contributions. I told myself you were happy with your life, with raising Olivia, with your foundation work. I convinced myself you didn't want the stress and pressure of the corporate world. Rich ran a hand through his wet hair. But if I'm honest, part of me was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid that if I acknowledged how much of MVP's success came from your insights, I'd somehow be diminished, that people would see me differently. He looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. It was wrong, Kate. I've known it was wrong for years. That's why I created this place, to remind myself of what we were before my ego got in the way. The revelation should have angered her more than it did. Instead, Kate felt a strange hollowness, the final confirmation of what she'd suspected but never fully articulated, even to herself. That somewhere along the way, her brilliant husband had absorbed her ideas so completely that even he had forgotten their origin. We don't have time for this right now, Victoria interrupted. Bennett's men are looking for all of us. We need a plan. Rich nodded, visibly pulling himself together. I managed to send the final evidence to the SEC before Bennett's men reach my office. The raid is still scheduled for tomorrow morning. We just need to stay hidden until then. What about Olivia? Kate asked. If Bennett threatened our family, I've already taken care of it, Rich assured her. Thomas arranged for private security in San Francisco. She's protected. Victoria's phone chimed with a text. She checked it, her expression grim. That was my contact at the SEC. Bennett's men are searching your house in Back Bay. We can't go back there. What do they want? Kate asked. Why come after us if the evidence is already with the SEC? Rich and Victoria exchanged a look that sent a chill down Kate's spine. There's one more piece they don't know about, Rich said. Evidence that ties Bennett directly to organized crime figures in Eastern Europe. It's encrypted on a secure drive. Where is it? Kate asked. Rich hesitated, then looked directly at her. It's in your grandmother's brooch. My what? The emerald brooch you inherited from your grandmother. I replaced the central stone with a custom-designed data storage device. It looks identical, but it contains files that would put Bennett away for decades. Kate stared at him in disbelief. You tampered with my grandmother's brooch without telling me. I needed somewhere Bennett would never think to look, Rich explained. Somewhere that would be naturally protected. Where is it now? Victoria asked urgently. In my jewelry box at home, Kate said. The one on my dresser. Rich's face paled. Then we have a problem, because that's exactly what Bennett's men will be looking for. The implications settled over the room like a physical weight. If Bennett found the evidence before the SEC raid, not only would he escape justice, but he'd know exactly who had betrayed him. "We need to get to your house before they find it," Victoria said, already moving toward the door. "It's too dangerous," Rich protested. "Bennett's men will be watching for us." "Then we need another way in," Kate said, her mind racing. "The service entrance through the garden. Mrs. Petrovich next door has a key for emergencies." Rich looked at her with newfound respect. "That could work, but Bennett's men will have the house surrounded." "Not if they're distracted elsewhere," Victoria suggested. "I could create a diversion, make them think we're trying to flee the city." The plan came together quickly. Victoria would take Rich's Tesla, making it visible enough to draw Bennett's men into pursuit. Meanwhile, Kate and Rich would approach their Back Bay home from the adjacent property, retrieve the brooch, and deliver the evidence to the SEC's secure location. As Victoria prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Be careful. Bennett's men aren't just hired muscle, they're ex-military contractors. They won't hesitate to use lethal force if cornered." When she was gone, Kate turned to Rich, seeing him with new eyes not just as the husband who had marginalized her contributions, but as a man facing mortality and trying, in his flawed way, to make things right. "The cancer," she said quietly. "How bad is it really?" Rich sank onto the couch, the bravado he'd maintained in Victoria's presence fading. "Bad enough. The treatments help with the pain, but Feldman's been clear about the prognosis. And the divorce papers I brought tonight." A sad smile crossed his face. "Ironic timing, I suppose, though I understand why you want out. Kate, I haven't been the husband you deserved." "No," she agreed. "You haven't, but right now, we have more pressing concerns than our failed marriage." Rich nodded, pushing himself to his feet with visible effort. "We should wait 30 minutes to give Victoria time to set up the diversion." Kate moved to the window, looking out at the rain-washed streets of Cambridge. "This apartment, how often do you come here?" "Once a month, maybe more often lately, since the diagnosis." Rich joined her at the window. "It helps me think clearly, reminds me of who I wanted to be before I got lost in building MVP. And who was that? Someone worthy of your brilliance, your partnership." He turned to face her. "I never meant to steal your ideas, Kate. In my mind, we were still collaborating, still building something together. I lost sight of the fact that you weren't actually in the room anymore." The honesty in his voice touched something in Kate that she'd thought long buried the part of her that had once believed in their partnership, both professional and personal. "I have a confession too," she said. "I let it happen. I stepped back from our professional partnership willingly, telling myself it was for Olivia's sake, but part of me was afraid too." "Afraid of what?" "That I wouldn't measure up, that the ideas we developed in this apartment were lightning in a bottle, and I'd never have insights that valuable again." Kate turned back to the window. It was easier to be the supportive wife than to risk professional failure. The revelation hung between them, two brilliant people who had allowed fear and ego to erode what had once been an extraordinary partnership. Rich's phone chimed with a text from Victoria, diversion in place. Bennett's men in pursuit. Go now. They moved quickly, taking Victoria's Mercedes since Bennett's men would be looking for Rich's Tesla. The drive back to Boston was tense, neither of them speaking as Rich navigated the rain-slicked roads with careful precision. Mrs. Petrovich, their 80-year-old neighbor, answered her door in a floral dressing gown, her white hair in curlers. Catherine Richard. What on earth? Sorry to disturb you, Mrs. P., Kate said quickly. Water main break at our place. We need to access through your garden. Is that all right? The elderly woman didn't question their story, despite the late hour and the absence of emergency vehicles that would accompany an actual water main break. She handed over her spare key to the garden gate that connected their properties. You're both soaking wet, she clucked. Take an umbrella at least. Armed with Mrs. Petrovich's oversized umbrella, they made their way through her garden to the gate separating the properties. Rich unlocked it, and they slipped into their own garden. Approaching the house from the rear, Kitchen entrance should be clear, Rich whispered. Security system is on, but I can disarm it from my phone. Kate followed him, hyper-aware of every sound in the rain-soaked garden. The house loomed dark and imposing, no lights visible from this angle. Rich tapped at his phone, and the small red light on the kitchen door's security panel blinked from red to green. "We're in," he murmured, carefully turning the handle. The kitchen was dark and silent, exactly as Kate had left it hours earlier. They moved through the house with practiced familiarity, avoiding the creaking step on the stairs, staying close to the wall where the floorboards were less likely to groan underfoot. At the master bedroom door, Rich paused, listening intently. When satisfied the room was empty, he pushed the door open slowly. The bedroom was in disarray, drawers pulled out, contents scattered across the floor. Bennett's men had clearly been thorough in their search. Kate moved quickly to her dresser, heart sinking at the sight of her jewelry box upended, its contents strewn across the surface. She sifted through the tangled necklaces and bracelets, looking for the emerald brooch. "It's not here," she whispered, panic rising. Rich joined her, helping to search through the scattered jewelry. "Are you sure this is where you kept it?" "Positive. I wore it to the hospital fundraiser last month and put it back." Kate stopped abruptly, a memory surfacing. "Wait. After the fundraiser, the clasp was loose. I took it to Cartier for repair. It should be in the safe." Relief washed over Rich's face. "The study safe?" Kate nodded, and they made their way back downstairs to Rich's study. The room showed signs of searching, but less thoroughly than the bedroom books pulled from shelves. Desk drawers left open. Rich moved to the painting behind his desk, a Rothko-inspired piece they'd purchased on their 20th anniversary. He swung it aside to reveal the wall safe. "The combination?" Kate asked. Rich's hands paused on the dial. "It's your birthday." The simple admission that after all these years, the code to his most secure possessions was still her birth date caught Kate off guard. Despite everything, there was still something between them, some connection that transcended their professional and personal missteps. The safe door swung open, revealing documents, cash, passports, and a small velvet box from Cartier. Kate reached for it with trembling hands, opening it to find her grandmother's emerald brooch nestled on white satin. "Thank God," Rich breathed. "Now we just need to get this to the SEC's secure drop point." A voice from the doorway froze them both. "I'm afraid that won't be happening, Mr. Morgan." They turned to find a tall man in an expensive suit, pointing a gun directly at them. Though Kate had never met him, she recognized Charles Bennett from photos in business magazines distinguished, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of old money and older power. "Bennett," Rich said, stepping in front of Kate. "How did you find us?" Bennett smiled coldly. "Mrs. Petrovich has a grandson who works for me. She called him, concerned about your unusual visit. We've had your house under surveillance since you disappeared from MVP." Kate clutched the brooch tightly, her mind racing for a way out of this deadly situation. "The evidence is already with the SEC," Rich said. "The raid is happening tomorrow morning. This is over. Charles." "Not quite." Bennett gestured with the gun. "The brooch, Mrs. Morgan." "Now." Kate hesitated, and Bennett's expression hardened. "The brooch, or I put a bullet in your husband right now." "Kate, don't," Rich began. But Kate stepped forward, extending her hand with the velvet box. As Bennett reached for it, the study erupted in chaos. The French doors to the garden burst open, and multiple figures in tactical gear swarmed into the room. "FBI, drop your weapon." Bennett swung his gun toward the agents, and Kate seized the moment of distraction to tackle Rich to the floor. A shot rang out, followed by a flurry of movement and shouting. When Kate looked up, Bennett was on the ground, agents securing his hands behind his back. A familiar face appeared above them, Thomas Whitfield, their family attorney, helping them to their feet. "Thomas," Kate gasped, How Victoria contacted me after she set up the diversion. Thomas explained, I've been working with the FBI on this case for months. We've had agents standing by, waiting for Bennett to make his move. As the FBI agents led Bennett away, Kate turned to Rich, who was leaning heavily against his desk, face ashen. Are you hurt? She asked, scanning him for injuries. He shook his head. Just the usual pain. It gets worse under stress. Thomas approached with a female FBI agent. Mrs. Morgan, we need the evidence from the brooch. Kate handed over the velvet box, and the agent carefully extracted the emerald, which she confirmed contained the encrypted data. What happens now? Kate asked. Bennett will be taken into custody, the agent explained. With this evidence and what Mr. Morgan already provided, we have enough for multiple federal charges: money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy. He'll be looking at decades in prison. As the agents finished securing the scene, Kate and Rich found themselves alone in the study. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, and the first hints of dawn were lightening the eastern sky. Quite a night, Rich said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Kate studied her husband, the man who had built an empire on their shared ideas, who had created a shrine to their early partnership while simultaneously erasing her contributions, who was now facing a terminal diagnosis and the collapse of the company he'd devoted his life to building. What happens to MVP? She asked. Without Bennett's investment, and with the scandal of his involvement, it's probably finished. Rich sank into his desk chair. All those employees, all that work. Unless someone steps in, Kate said slowly, someone who understands the company's methodologies from the ground up. Rich looked up, understanding dawning in his eyes. Kate, you can't be suggesting, why not? They're my frameworks too. Remember you said it yourself. Kate moved to the window, watching as FBI vehicles pulled away from their house. Maybe it's time I reclaimed what was partly mine to begin with. The board would never accept new leadership in the middle of this crisis. They might, if the new leadership came with the Morgan name and Harvard credentials, especially if that leadership was co-signed by the founder himself. Rich stared at her, emotions playing across his face: surprise, admiration, and something like hope. You'd want to save MVP after everything. Kate turned to face him fully. I'm not doing it for you, Rich. I'm doing it for me, for the woman who had those ideas in the first place, the woman who's been invisible for too long, and us, the divorce. Kate glanced at the manila envelope containing the divorce papers, still in her briefcase where she'd left it hours ago. I think we have more immediate concerns than dissolving our marriage, she said. You have treatment to focus on. I have a company to salvage, and we both have a daughter who deserves to know what's happening with her parents. Rich nodded slowly. Partners, then at least for now. Kate considered the man before her, flawed, brilliant, dying, and the complicated legacy they'd built together, both personal and professional. Partners, she agreed, extending her hand in a gesture that felt both businesslike and deeply intimate. At least for now. As Rich took her hand, the first true rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the study where so many decisions about their lives had been made. Whether this new partnership would lead to reconciliation or a more amicable parting remained to be seen. But for the first time in years, Kate felt something she'd almost forgotten: the exhilarating challenge of charting her own course. The road ahead would be difficult. Rich's illness, the corporate crisis, their damaged marriage, none of these had simple solutions. But as Kate Morgan stood in the morning light, she recognized that the woman who had entered Rich's office the night before with divorce papers was not the same woman who now faced a new day with newfound purpose. Some detours, it seemed, were meant to bring you back to yourself. 6 months could change everything or nothing at all. Kate Morgan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of what had once been Rich's office at Morgan Venture Partners, watching Boston's financial district bustle below. Spring had given way to summer, then fall, and now winter threatened again, the November sky heavy with the promise of snow. The office had changed. Gone were Rich's rowing trophies and the stark modernist paintings he'd favored. In their place stood Kate's collection of global artifacts textiles from Guatemala, ceremonial masks from West Africa, handcrafted pottery from New Mexico. Each piece represented a place where MVP's Phoenix methodology had helped local businesses rise from economic ashes. "The board meeting starts in 5 minutes," announced Diane, Kate's executive assistant, from the doorway. "Thank you," Kate replied, smoothing the lapels of her charcoal suit. "Is Victoria here yet?" "Just arrived. She's setting up in the conference room." Kate nodded, gathering the presentation materials she'd prepared. 6 months as acting CEO of Morgan Venture Partners had taught her more than the previous 20 years of occasional charity board positions. The learning curve had been brutal, the challenges relentless, but for the first time in decades, Kate felt fully alive. The hallway to the conference room stretched before her, glass-walled offices displaying the company that had somehow survived Charles Bennett's arrest and the subsequent media firestorm. When Kate had stepped in as interim leader, MVP's stock had plummeted, clients had fled, and the remaining executive team had been shell-shocked. "We have 6 months," Thomas Whitfield had warned her. "Maybe less before the company becomes unsalvageable." Kate had nodded, already formulating a strategy. "Then we'd better work quickly." Now, approaching the half-year mark of her unexpected leadership, Kate was preparing to present the results of what business media had taken to calling the Phoenix Pivot MVP's remarkable transformation from scandal-plagued consultancy to ethical business transformation leader. Victoria Spencer waited in the conference room, arranging presentation materials with her characteristic precision. At 48, Victoria remained striking dark hair cut in a severe bob, perpetually impeccable in tailored suits that emphasized her athletic frame. In the months since Bennett's arrest, she had become Kate's most valuable ally, her institutional knowledge of MVP proving invaluable. "Ready for this?" Victoria asked, glancing up as Kate entered. "As ready as I'll ever be," Kate replied, setting down her materials. "How's the market reacting to the quarterly numbers?" "Up 3% since opening. The analysts are cautiously optimistic." Victoria lowered her voice. "How's Rich today?" The question still sent a pang through Kate's chest, though she'd grown accustomed to hearing it. "Good days and bad. Today's somewhere in the middle. The new treatment protocol has fewer side effects. At least." Victoria nodded, a shadow crossing her face. Despite her professional demeanor, Kate had come to recognize the depth of Victoria's concern for Rich. Their relationship had clearly been more than just colleagues. Though Kate suspected it had never crossed professional boundaries, Victoria simply cared, deeply, for the man who had been her mentor and friend for nearly 2 decades. Board members began filing in the old guard who had survived the Bennett scandal, alongside new additions Kate had personally recruited to strengthen MVP's ethical governance. Last to enter was Martha Peterson, elegant at 76, her silver hair swept into a chignon that emphasized her aristocratic features. Martha had been Kate and Rich's advisor at Harvard Business School, the professor who had first recognized their complementary talents. When Kate sought to reconstitute the board with respected figures beyond reproach, Martha had been her first call. "Catherine," Martha greeted her with the formal name few still used. "You're looking well. Leadership suits you. Thank you for coming. Martha, your support means everything." The older woman squeezed Kate's hand. "I always knew you had this in you. I'm just sorry it took such circumstances to bring it out." The board meeting proceeded with the structured efficiency Kate had established. Quarterly financials were reviewed, showing modest but significant recovery. New client acquisitions were up, staff retention had stabilized, and the reputational metrics indicated slow but steady improvement. "And now," Kate said, standing to address the room, "I'd like to present our strategic plan for the next 18 months. She moved to the front of the room, feeling the weight of 14 pairs of eyes upon her. 6 months ago, she would have found this terrifying. Now, it felt like where she belonged. "MVP stands at a crossroads," she began. "We've weathered the immediate crisis, But our long-term survival depends on more than just damage control. It requires transformation, the very process we've guided hundreds of clients through. Safrum. Kate clicked to the first slide of her presentation, revealing the familiar Phoenix logo, now redesigned with cleaner, more contemporary lines. I propose a complete restructuring of MVP around three core principles: ethical leadership, transparent governance, and regenerative business practices. For the next 30 minutes, Kate outlined her vision, a reimagined MVP that would lead by example, demonstrating the transformation it advocated for clients. The plan was bold, requiring significant investment and restructuring. But as Kate spoke, she could see the board members leaning forward, engaged and increasingly supportive. When she finished, Thomas Whitfield was the first to speak. I've been on this board for 15 years, and I've never seen a more comprehensive or compelling strategic vision. I move that we approve Catherine's plan and remove the acting from her CEO title, effective immediately. Martha seconded the motion, and the vote was unanimous. Just like that, Kate Morgan became the official CEO of the company built on her ideas. As board members filed out, offering congratulations, Martha lingered behind. That was masterful. Catherine, Richard would be proud. He's seen the plan, Kate said, gathering her materials. He helped refine some of the implementation timelines. Martha studied her with shrewd eyes. And how are things between you two, beyond the business aspects? It was the question Kate had been avoiding with everyone except Olivia, who deserved complete honesty about her parents' relationship. The truth was, Kate herself wasn't entirely sure how to characterize what had evolved between her and Rich over these months of crisis and reinvention. The divorce papers remained unsigned, tucked away in her desk drawer at home. Rich's illness had progressed more slowly than his doctors initially feared, the aggressive treatment buying precious time. They still lived in the same house, though Rich often stayed in the guest suite when the treatments left him exhausted or in pain. They were neither estranged nor reconciled, existing instead in some undefined middle ground of mutual respect and shared purpose that defied easy categorization. "We're working through things," Kate said finally. "The immediate crisis brought us closer in some ways. Other issues remain unresolved." Martha nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Life rarely gives us clean narratives, does it, especially at our age?" "No," Kate agreed with a rueful smile. "It certainly doesn't." After the board meeting, Kate returned to her office to find a text from Olivia landed in Boston. "Coming straight to your office." "Big news." Kate smiled, anticipation warming her. Olivia's impromptu visits from San Francisco had become more frequent since Rich's diagnosis, but this one hadn't been scheduled. Whatever her big news was, it had prompted an unexpected cross-country flight. An hour later, Olivia burst through Kate's office door, her energy immediately filling the space. At 23, she was a striking blend of both parents, Rich's height and hazel eyes combined with Kate's delicate features and honey blonde hair. "Mom!" she exclaimed, dropping her carry-on bag and embracing Kate tightly. "You look amazing, CEO. Life clearly agrees with you." "It's official as of today," Kate said, returning the hug. "The board voted to make my position permanent." "That's fantastic." Olivia stepped back, her expression growing serious. "How's Dad doing?" "Better than last month. The new immunotherapy seems to be helping." Kate gestured for Olivia to sit. "But enough about us. What's this big news that couldn't wait?" Olivia perched on the edge of the visitor's chair, practically vibrating with excitement. "Remember that startup I've been working for, Vanguard Tech?" "Of course." "The Sustainable Agriculture AI platform. Well, we just closed our Series B funding, $60 million. Olivia's face split into a proud grin. "And the best part, I've been promoted to Chief Product Officer." "Olivia, that's incredible," Kate exclaimed, genuinely thrilled. "Chief Product Officer at 23. That's extraordinary. It's crazy, right? The CEO said my strategic vision for the platform expansion was what convinced the investors. Olivia laughed. Apparently, those Morgan genes for business strategy didn't skip a generation. The comment hung in the air for a moment, a reminder of the complicated legacy that bound their family. Kate had been careful not to burden Olivia with the full truth about MVP's founding and her unacknowledged contributions, sharing only that she and Rich had initially developed many ideas together. It's not just genetics, Kate said carefully. You've worked incredibly hard. We're both so proud of you. Olivia's expression softened. Thanks, and Mom, that means a lot. She hesitated, then added, there's something else I wanted to tell you both in person. Is Dad at home? He should be. His treatment was this morning, so he's likely resting. Then can we go? I'd rather share this with both of you together. The drive to Back Bay was filled with Olivia's animated descriptions of San Francisco and the startup culture that had embraced her. Kate listened, marveling at her daughter's confidence and clarity of purpose. Whatever struggles she and Rich had faced in their marriage, they had managed to raise a remarkable young woman. Rich was in the kitchen when they arrived, attempting to prepare tea despite his obvious fatigue. The physical changes from his illness were more apparent now: the weight loss, the pallor that never quite disappeared, the careful way he moved to minimize pain. Yet his eyes lit up at the sight of Olivia, momentarily erasing the marks of his disease. There's my girl, he said, opening his arms for her embrace. What a wonderful surprise. Hi, Daddy, Olivia said, hugging him gently. I have news that couldn't wait for FaceTime. They settled in the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the bare branches of the trees in the garden. Rich eased himself into his favorite armchair, while Kate and Olivia took the sofa opposite. So, Rich said, his voice stronger than his appearance suggested. What couldn't wait? Olivia shared her promotion news, beaming with pride as Rich congratulated her effusively. Chief Product Officer is extraordinary, he said, though not surprising to anyone who knows how brilliant you are. There's more, Olivia said, suddenly looking nervous. She took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed was profound. Both Kate and Rich momentarily stunned. Pregnant? Kate finally managed. But are you who's Marco? Olivia supplied, naming the software engineer she'd been dating for the past year. It wasn't planned, but we're both actually really happy about it. Scared, but happy. Rich leaned forward in his chair. Are you getting married? Dad, it's 2025, not 1955, Olivia said, rolling her eyes. We're figuring things out. Marco's a good man, and we love each other, but we're not rushing into marriage just because of the baby. Kate found her voice again. When are you due? May 15th, Olivia said, a smile spreading across her face. You're going to be grandparents in the spring. The word grandparents hit Kate and Rich simultaneously. They exchanged a look that contained multitude's shock, joy, and the bittersweet recognition that Rich might not live to see his grandchild grow up. A baby, Rich said softly, tears gathering in his eyes. Our baby is having a baby. Something cracked open in Kate's chest at the vulnerability in his voice. Despite everything, his appropriation of her ideas, their years of growing apart, the secrets and resentments in this moment, they were simply parents sharing a profound milestone. Olivia moved to perch on the arm of Rich's chair, taking his hand. The doctors say you're responding well to the new treatment. Dad, you're going to meet your grandchild. The determined optimism in her voice nearly broke Kate's composure. Olivia was well aware of her father's prognosis. The 18-month estimate had been recalibrated to possibly 2 or 3 years with the new treatment protocol. But even the most optimistic projections suggested Rich would see his grandchild's earliest years at best. Of course I will, Rich agreed, squeezing Olivia's hand. Nothing could keep me from meeting this little one. The rest of the evening unfolded in a strange blend of celebration and poignancy. They ordered from Olivia's favorite Italian restaurant, opened a bottle of wine sparkling water for the expectant mother, and reminisced about Olivia's childhood. For a few hours, they were simply a family again, the complications of their adult relationships temporarily suspended. After Olivia went up to her old bedroom for the night, Kate found Rich on the terrace, wrapped in a heavy blanket against the November chill. "You shouldn't be out here," she admonished gently. "Your immune system is already compromised, I know," he finished with a small smile. "But some moments deserve the risk of fresh air." Kate hesitated, then joined him, leaning against the stone balustrade. "A grandchild," she said, still processing the reality. "I never expected it so soon." "Nor I," Rich agreed, "though I'm selfishly glad for the timing." The unspoken truth hung between them that without this accelerated timeline, Rich might never have known his grandchild at all. "Kate," he said after a moment, his voice tentative, "there's something I need to ask you." She turned to face him, noting the seriousness in his expression. "What is it?" "The company MVP, it's yours now. Officially, you've turned it around, made it stronger than it ever was under my leadership." He paused and gathering strength. "But there's still the matter of historical credit, the methodologies, the frameworks you developed." "Rich, that's not necessary right now." "It is," he insisted. "It's long overdue. I've drafted a public statement acknowledging your foundational contributions to MVP's intellectual property. I want to release it before—" He hesitated. "While I still can." Kate felt her throat tighten. This admission, this public recognition of her role in building what had become a billion-dollar consultancy, was something she'd never explicitly asked for. Yet its absence had gnawed at her for years. "Are you sure?" she asked. "The timing, with the company just stabilizing—" "I'm sure," Rich said firmly. "It's the right thing to do, not just for you, but for the historical record, for Olivia and her child, for the truth." Kate studied the man before her, diminished physically by illness, yet somehow expanded in spirit. The Rich Morgan who had built MVP through sheer force of will and ambition would never have considered sharing credit for his success. This Rich, facing his mortality and the legacy he would leave behind, seemed determined to set right what had once gone wrong. "Thank you," she said simply, the words inadequate for the complex emotions swirling within her. Rich nodded, then shivered slightly as a gust of wind swept across the terrace. "I should go in. Early treatment tomorrow." Kate watched him make his careful way back into the house, struck by how their roles had reversed. For years, she had been the supporter, the facilitator of his ambitions. Now she led the company while he focused on the exhausting work of staying alive. Later that night, unable to sleep, Kate found herself drawn to Rich's study. The room remained largely unchanged since the night Bennett had held them at gunpoint, the same leather furniture, the same walls safe behind the Rothko-inspired painting, the same bookshelves lined with business texts and family photographs. Kate moved to the desk where she had placed the divorce papers that fateful night, only to discover they had been replaced with something else, a leather-bound journal she recognized as Rich's. It lay open, as if inviting reading. She hesitated, respecting his privacy, but something about the deliberate placement suggested he had left it for her to find. Kate sat in his chair and began to read. October 18, 2025. "Dr. Feldman says the new protocol is showing promise, but I see the caution in his eyes. Time is the one commodity I can't acquire. No matter how wealthy or connected I am, 18 months has become 24, perhaps 36 with luck. I find myself bargaining with God, with the universe, not for a cure, which I know is beyond reach, but for enough time to make amends. Kate has transformed MVP in ways I never could. The Phoenix Protocol, she's implemented her protocol. Her vision from 20 years ago has saved the company and hundreds of jobs. I watch her in board meetings, commanding respect without demanding it, and I wonder how I ever convinced myself that her stepping back from our professional partnership was her choice rather than my unconscious orchestration. Olivia arrives tomorrow with news she says can't wait. I suspect an engagement. Perhaps. Marco seems a good man, though of course no one will ever be good enough for my daughter. I hope whatever her news, it brings joy. We could use more of that. The divorce papers remain unsigned in Kate's desk. Neither of us has mentioned them in months. Are we staying married out of convenience? Out of duty during my illness? Or is there something still worth salvaging? I find myself hoping for the latter, though I've forfeited any right to expect it. Kate closed the journal, emotions conflicting within her. The raw honesty of Rich's private thoughts, his recognition of his failings, his admiration for her leadership, his uncertainty about their marriage touched her deeply. She was still sitting at his desk when Olivia found her an hour later, dressed in the oversized Harvard t-shirt she'd slept in since her undergraduate days. "Can't sleep either?" Olivia asked, sliding into the leather chair opposite the desk. "Too much on my mind," Kate admitted. "Your news, the company, your father." Olivia nodded, tucking her feet beneath her. "I've been thinking about something Dad told me a few months ago, when he first explained about his illness." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He said his biggest regret wasn't the cancer or even the Bennett scandal. It was that he'd allowed his ambition to overshadow your brilliance." Kate looked up sharply. "He said that he did, and he told me that many of MVP's core methodologies were actually your ideas originally." Olivia leaned forward. "Why didn't you ever tell me that? Mom, all those years I thought you were just Dad's supporter." The question pierced Kate's carefully maintained composure. "It's complicated, Olivia. I made choices we both did. I prioritized raising you, creating a stable home, and somewhere along the way, the boundaries between our intellectual contributions blurred." "But he took credit for your work," Olivia pressed. "Doesn't that make you angry?" Kate sighed, considering the question that had haunted her for months. "Yes, sometimes it does. But the truth is more nuanced than simple theft. We developed those ideas together initially. The problem came later, when I stepped back from the professional world and he continued building on our shared foundation without acknowledgement. And now you're saving his company." "Our company," Kate corrected gently. "Whatever else has happened between us, MVP was built by both of us, in different ways." Olivia was quiet for a moment, processing this revision to her family history. "The baby has made me think a lot about legacy," she said finally. "What we pass down, intentionally or not. I don't want my child growing up with an incomplete understanding of who their grandparents really were." "No one's legacy is simple," Kate said. "Your father built something remarkable, even if he used some of my ideas to do it. And I allowed it to happen, even encouraged it in many ways. We're both responsible for how things unfolded. And now what happens between you two now?" It was the question Kate had been asking herself for months, with no clear answer in sight. The crisis with Bennett, Rich's illness, her assumption of leadership at MVP all had created a strange new dynamic between them, neither married nor separated in any meaningful sense. "I don't know," Kate admitted. "We're in uncharted territory." Olivia nodded, then yawned widely. "Sorry. Pregnancy fatigue is no joke." "Go back to bed," Kate said, smiling. "We have plenty of time to figure all this out." After Olivia returned upstairs, Kate remained in Rich's study, contemplating the journal and what it revealed about his state of mind. Whatever came next for them, it was clear that Rich was engaged in the painful work of honest self-reflection, a process Kate recognized from her own journey these past months. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Rich left early for his treatment at Mass General, while Kate and Olivia shared a leisurely breakfast, discussing everything from the baby's nursery to potential investments for Olivia's newly increased salary. Kate was about to leave for MVP when her phone rang. Thomas Whitfield, his tone urgent. "Kate, have you seen the Wall Street Journal this morning?" "No. Why?" "There's a full-page statement from Rich acknowledging your role in developing MVP's core methodologies. It's quite extraordinary." Kate felt the blood drain from her face. "He did what you didn't know," Thomas sounded surprised. "It's a comprehensive account of your contributions dating back to Harvard. He credits you as the primary architect of the Phoenix Protocol and several other foundational frameworks." "I need to see it," Kate said, her voice tight. Forward it to me immediately. Minutes later, Kate stared at her tablet, reading Rich's public declaration with growing disbelief. The statement was more than an acknowledgement. It was a full confession and apology for decades of unattributed intellectual appropriation. While I have been the public face of Morgan Venture Partners since its inception, the company's most innovative and enduring methodologies originated primarily with Catherine Sullivan Morgan, my wife and the true visionary behind our success. Rich had written, "For too long, I allowed my ego and ambition to obscure her foundational contributions. This statement is long overdue, and I offer it now as both professional attribution and personal apology." The statement continued with specific details of Kate's contributions to each major MVP framework, concluding with Rich's announcement that all future publications and materials would properly credit her as co-creator. Kate's phone erupted with notifications, emails, texts, calls from journalists seeking comment. The business world was already reacting to this unprecedented public admission from one of its most prominent figures. "Mom." Olivia appeared in the doorway, her own phone in hand. "Have you seen what Dad did?" "I'm reading it now," Kate said, her voice unsteady. "Did you know about this?" Olivia shook her head. "Not specifically, though he mentioned wanting to set the record straight about your contributions." Kate's phone rang again. Victoria this time. "The office is in chaos," she reported when Kate answered. "Media requests are pouring in. The board is demanding an emergency meeting, and clients are calling to confirm the statement's authenticity." "Tell everyone I'll be there in 30 minutes, Kate said, already moving toward her bedroom to dress. "And Victoria, no comments to anyone until I arrive?" As Kate prepared to leave, her phone chimed with a text from Rich. "I should have asked your permission first. I'm sorry for the chaos this may cause, but I'm not sorry for telling the truth. It was long overdue." Kate stared at the message, a storm of emotions making it impossible to formulate a reply. She tucked the phone away and headed for the garage, her mind racing with the implications of Rich's public declaration. The MVP offices were indeed in chaos when Kate arrived. Staff members huddled in small groups, discussing the bombshell their founder had dropped. The receptionist looked relieved to see Kate, immediately directing her to the main conference room where the executive team awaited. Victoria met her at the door. "Everyone's here, including Thomas and 3 board members who happened to be in Boston. Martha's on video conference." Kate nodded, straightening her shoulders as she entered the room. All conversation ceased, all eyes turning to her expectantly. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "I assume everyone has read Richard's statement in the journal." Nods around the table confirmed this. "Let me be clear, while the timing was unexpected, the content of his statement is accurate. The methodologies and frameworks he attributed to me were indeed primarily my work, developed initially during our time at Harvard and in the early years of our marriage." The room remained silent, processing this confirmation. "I understand this revelation may be disorienting for those who have been with MVP for many years," Kate continued. "It doesn't change the value of the work we do or the impact we've had for our clients. If anything, it reinforces the collaborative foundation upon which this company was built." Thomas Whitfield spoke up from his position at the far end of the table. "Kate, the board is concerned about potential legal implications. If you were to make claims against the company for past compensation related to these contributions—" "I have no intention of doing so," Kate interrupted firmly. "My focus is on MVP's future, not its past. Richard's statement is about historical accuracy and credit, not financial compensation." "Sofranenarum." Martha Peterson's voice came through the video conference system. "If I may, I believe Richard's statement could actually strengthen MVP's position going forward. It demonstrates ethical leadership and a commitment to transparency values that align perfectly with the corporate transformation Catherine has been implementing." Gradually, the initial shock in the room gave way to strategic discussion. By the time the meeting concluded 2 hours later, a comprehensive communication plan had been developed to address the media interest, client concerns, and internal questions raised by Rich's declaration. As the executives filed out, Victoria lingered behind. You really didn't know he was going to do this. Kate shook her head. He mentioned wanting to make a public statement, but I had no idea he planned something so comprehensive. It's career suicide, Victoria said bluntly. If he ever wanted to return to business after his treatment, this admission would make it nearly impossible. He's essentially confessed to decades of intellectual property appropriation. I don't think he expects to return to business, Kate said quietly. This isn't about his career prospects. It's about setting the record straight while he still can. Victoria's expression softened. I've known Rich for 18 years. I've never seen him do anything this selfless. Mortality has a way of clarifying priorities, Kate observed, gathering her notes from the meeting. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to draft my own statement. Alone in her office, Kate stared at the blank document on her computer screen. How did one respond to such a public admission with gratitude, vindication, forgiveness? The business world would be watching her response as closely as they had Rich's confession. After several false starts, Kate settled on a simple, direct approach. Richard Morgan's statement regarding my contributions to Morgan Venture Partners methodologies represents an important step toward historical accuracy. While the development of these frameworks involve collaboration and evolution over time, I appreciate his recognition of my foundational role in their creation. Moving forward, MVP remains committed to the principles of ethical leadership and transparent governance that have guided our recent transformation. As CEO, my focus continues to be on our clients, our employees, and the positive impact we can create in the business world. I ask for privacy for our family during this period of public discussion, as we navigate both professional realignment and personal health challenges. Kate read the statement over once more, then sent it to the communications team for immediate release. It was measured, professional, and revealed nothing of the emotional earthquake she was experiencing privately. By the time Kate arrived home that evening, she was mentally and emotionally exhausted. The day had been a whirlwind of media inquiries, client reassurances, and internal communications. She had given 3 interviews, participated in 2 client conference calls, and addressed the entire MVP staff, all while processing her own complex reactions to Rich's public declaration. The house was quiet when she entered, just a single lamp illuminating the foyer. Kate dropped her briefcase and coat, slipping off her heels with a sigh of relief. The hardwood floors were cool beneath her stocking feet as she made her way toward the kitchen, seeking a glass of wine and a moment of peace. She found Rich instead, sitting at the kitchen island with a cup of tea and his laptop open before him. You're still up, she said, pausing in the doorway. How was treatment? The usual, he replied, closing the laptop. Exhausting, but necessary. How was your day? I imagine it was rather eventful. The understatement hung in the air between them. Kate moved to the wine rack, selecting a bottle of Pinot Noir. Eventful doesn't begin to cover it, she said, reaching for the corkscrew. The board called an emergency meeting. Thomas was concerned about potential legal implications. Martha thought it was brilliant strategic positioning. Rich watched her pour the wine, his expression unreadable. And you, what did you think? Kate took a long sip before answering. I think you should have warned me. This affects my leadership at MVP, my professional reputation, our family. You're right, Rich acknowledged. I should have. He hesitated, searching for words. I was afraid you might try to talk me out of it. Would that have been so terrible to discuss it first, to prepare a coordinated response? Perhaps not, he conceded. But sometimes doing the right thing requires burning the ships behind you. No retreat possible. Kate studied him over the rim of her wineglass. In the soft kitchen lighting, the ravages of his illness were less apparent, and she could almost see the young, ambitious man she'd fallen in love with at Harvard, the man who approached every challenge with absolute conviction. Why now, Rich, after all these years? Why make this public declaration now? He met her gaze directly. Because I'm running out of time to set things right. Because Olivia deserves to know the truth about her parents' contributions. Because you deserve recognition for your ideas while I'm still alive to acknowledge them. The simple honesty of his answer disarmed her. There was no corporate strategy here. No calculated public relations move, just a dying man trying to correct a long-standing wrong. I saw your statement, Rich continued. It was gracious, more than I deserved. Kate shrugged slightly. It was what the situation required. Professional, measured, but not how you really feel. It was a statement, not a question. Kate set down her wine glass, suddenly weary of the careful dance they'd been performing for months. How I really feel, she laughed, a short, bitter sound. I don't even know myself. Validated angry, it took terminal illness for you to acknowledge my contributions. Grateful, resentful. All of the above, I suppose. Rich nodded slowly. That's fair. I wouldn't expect anything less complex. What do you want from me, Rich? Kate asked directly. Forgiveness, absolution, before you die. The harshness of her words hung in the air between them. Rich flinched slightly but didn't look away. I want you to know that I see you, he said quietly, that I've always seen you, even when my actions suggested otherwise. I want you to have what's rightfully yours, the recognition, the legacy, the truth, not for my sake, but for yours. Kate felt tears threatening and turned away, unwilling to let him see how deeply his words affected her. After months of professional poise and emotional restraint, she found herself perilously close to breaking. I need time to process all this, she said, reaching for her wine glass again. It's been a long day, Rich nodded, rising slowly from his stool. Of course. I'll let you have some peace. He paused at the doorway, looking back at her. For what it's worth, Kate, watching you lead MVP these past months has been extraordinary. You've done what I never could: transform the company into something truly worthy of the vision we both had all those years ago. After he left, Kate remained in the kitchen, his words echoing in her mind. The vision we both had, that was the crux of it, wasn't it? They had started as true partners, their dreams and ambitions intertwined. Somewhere along the way, his path had diverged from hers, taking her ideas with it while leaving her behind. Now, facing mortality and legacy, Rich was trying to restore what had been lost, not just professional credit, but the recognition of their original partnership in all its forms. Kate was still contemplating this when Olivia appeared in the doorway, wrapped in her old Harvard sweatshirt. Hey, she said softly. I thought I heard voices. Your father just went up, Kate said, gesturing to the open bottle. Wine. Olivia shook her head, patting her still flat stomach. Not for a while, but I'll keep you company. She settled onto a stool, watching as Kate poured herself a second glass. So, today was intense. That's putting it mildly. Kate agreed. How much did you know about your father's plans? Just that he was working on some kind of public statement. I had no idea it would be so comprehensive. Olivia hesitated. Are you angry with him? Kate considered the question. Not angry, exactly. It's more complicated than that. Because he finally acknowledged your contributions. Because he did it without warning me, without considering how it might impact my leadership at MVP. Because he made a unilateral decision about our shared history, just as he did when he built the company on my ideas. Olivia was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. I've been thinking a lot about you and Dad, about your marriage, your partnership, trying to understand it. And what insights has my brilliant daughter gleaned? Kate asked, attempting lightness. That you both made choices that seemed right at the time, but led you down paths neither of you intended. Olivia traced patterns on the countertop with her finger. That somewhere along the way, you both lost sight of what made you such powerful partners in the first place. The observation, simple yet profound, hit Kate with unexpected force. Was that what had happened? Had they simply lost sight of each other amid the demands of career, parenthood, and everyday life? "When did you get so wise?" Kate asked, reaching across to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Must be the pregnancy hormones," Olivia quipped, then grew serious again. "Mom, I need to ask you something. The divorce papers, are you still planning to sign them?" The question caught Kate off guard. She and Rich had maintained their strange limbo for months, neither moving forward with the divorce nor explicitly deciding against it. "I don't know," she admitted. "With your father's illness, it seemed cruel to proceed. And now, with the company, with his public statement—" "But what do you want?" Olivia pressed. "Not what's practical or kind or expected. What do you, Kate Morgan, actually want?" It was the question Kate had been avoiding, even in her own thoughts. What did she want? The answer had seemed so clear that night she'd brought the divorce papers to Rich's office, a clean break, a chance to reclaim her identity separate from him. But so much had changed since then. "I want," Kate began, then stopped, searching for words. "I want to honor the partnership we once had without being defined by it. I want recognition for my contributions without diminishing his. I want to remember why I loved him, without forgetting why I almost left." Olivia nodded slowly. "And what about now? Do you still love him?" Kate stared into her wine glass, as if the answers might be found in its depths. "I love the man he's becoming in the face of mortality," she said finally. "The man who's finally brave enough to acknowledge truth, to correct long-standing wrongs. But that doesn't erase 20 years of feeling invisible in my own marriage." "No," Olivia agreed. "It doesn't." She slid off the stool, coming around the island to embrace her mother. "Whatever you decide, I support you. I just want you both to find peace with each other before—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. After Olivia went upstairs, Kate remained in the kitchen, her daughter's questions echoing in her mind. What did she want after months of crisis management, strategic leadership, and emotional compartmentalization? The simple question felt revolutionary. On impulse, Kate moved to the study, retrieving the manila envelope containing their unsigned divorce papers from her desk drawer. She sat in the leather chair, examining the documents that had once represented liberation, but now felt like an artifact from another life. The Kate Morgan who had prepared these papers had been a woman seeking escape from invisibility, desperate to reclaim her identity after decades in her husband's shadow. The Kate Morgan contemplating them now was CEO of a billion-dollar consultancy, publicly acknowledged as the intellectual architect of its most valuable assets, faced with a husband who was both dying and determined to right the wrongs between them. Could those two versions of herself coexist? Could she honor both her need for recognition and the complex love that still existed between her and Rich? Kate was still pondering these questions when dawn broke over Boston, painting the study in soft golden light. She had made no definitive decision about the divorce papers, but something had shifted within her, a willingness to consider possibilities beyond the binary choices of staying or leaving. The next morning brought more media coverage of Rich's declaration and Kate's response. Business analysts debated the implications for MVP. Intellectual property experts discussed potential precedents, and feminist commentators highlighted the broader pattern of women's contributions being absorbed by male partners. Through it all, Kate maintained the professional poise that had become her hallmark, neither denying nor dwelling on the personal aspects of the situation. At MVP, she focused on implementation of her strategic vision, reassuring clients and employees that the company's future remained bright despite the revelations about its past. A week after Rich's public statement, Kate received an unexpected call from Martha Peterson. "Catherine, I need to see you and Richard together," the older woman said without preamble. "Tonight, if possible." "Martha, is everything all right?" "The board." "This isn't about the board or MVP," Martha interrupted. "It's about something I should have shared years ago. Can you both meet me at my home in Cambridge at 7? Intrigued and slightly concerned, Kate agreed, then texted Rich about the unusual request. His response was immediate. I'll be ready to leave at 6:30. Martha's Cambridge home was a stately Victorian near Harvard Square, filled with books, art, and mementos from her decades in academia. She greeted Kate and Rich at the door herself, ushering them into a cozy study where a fire crackled in the hearth. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing for them to sit. "What I have to share has weighed on me for years, and Richard's recent public statement has made it impossible for me to remain silent any longer." Martha moved to her desk, retrieving a large leather portfolio. "When you were my students at Harvard Business School, I recognized something extraordinary in your partnership, a rare complementary brilliance. Richard with his bold vision and driving ambition, Catherine with her strategic precision and ethical framework." She opened the portfolio, revealing dozens of papers, notes, and evaluations. "I kept copies of your joint projects, your individual work, your contributions to class discussions. I've followed both your careers closely over the decades." Martha removed a particular document, handing it to Kate. It was her final thesis presentation from Harvard, the strategic framework that had later evolved into MVP's Phoenix Protocol. "Catherine, this work was revolutionary even then. It predicted business transformation patterns that wouldn't become mainstream for another decade." Martha turned to Rich. "And Richard, your implementation strategies for Catherine's frameworks were equally brilliant. You each had what the other lacked together. You were unstoppable." Rich looked at the paper spread before them, his expression pained. "Why are you showing us this now, Martha?" "Because I watched it happen," she said quietly. "I watched as Catherine's ideas became subsumed into your vision. Richard, I saw her step back after Olivia's birth, and I saw you fail to create space for her return. I observed as her foundational contributions disappeared into Morgan Venture Partners methodologies without attribution." Martha's gaze was steady, compassionate but unflinching. "And I said nothing. As your mentor, as someone who recognized Catherine's exceptional talent from the beginning, I should have spoken up. I should have reminded you both of the power of your original partnership." Kate stared at her old professor, emotions conflicting within her. "Why didn't you?" "Because it wasn't my place to direct your life choices," Martha said. "But I regretted my silence more with each passing year. Each new achievement credited solely to Richard. Each time Catherine's brilliance was channeled into supporting roles rather than leadership." Rich sat very still, his face pale. "I've acknowledged my failure publicly now. Martha, what more can I do?" "It's not about what you can do, Richard," Martha said gently. "It's about what you both might consider doing together, with whatever time remains." She gathered the papers back into the portfolio and handed it to Kate. "This is your shared intellectual history. Not just Richard's, not just Catherine's, the foundation you built together before things went awry." Martha looked between them, her expression softening. "I don't presume to advise you on your marriage or your personal choices, but as someone who has observed your professional partnership from its inception, I believe there's still potential there if you can find a way past the hurt and recognition to true collaboration once more." The drive home from Cambridge was quiet, both Kate and Rich absorbed in their own thoughts after Martha's unexpected intervention. The portfolio lay on the seat between them, a physical manifestation of their shared intellectual history. As they crossed the Longfellow Bridge, Boston's skyline sparkling against the night sky, Rich finally broke the silence. "She's right. You know, we were unstoppable together." Kate gazed out at the city where they had built their lives, their family, their careers. "Yes, we were." "Kate," Rich said, his voice tentative, "I've been thinking about the divorce papers." She turned to look at him. This man she had loved for more than half her life, now facing his own mortality with a courage that moved her despite everything that had transpired between them. "So have I," she admitted. "I don't want to pressure you," he continued. "If signing them is what you need for closure, for justice after everything that's happened, I understand." Kate considered his words and the many possible futures that lay before them. The path ahead was neither simple nor clear, but perhaps that was fitting for a partnership as complex as theirs had always been. "I'm not ready to sign them," she said finally. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know what our future holds, Rich, but I'm not ready to formally end our past." Relief washed over his face, followed by cautious hope. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we keep finding our way forward," Kate said, reaching across the seat to take his hand. "Day by day, conversation by conversation. No grand promises, no dramatic gestures, just two people with a complicated history trying to create an honest present." Rich's fingers tightened around hers. "I can work with that." As they pulled into the driveway of their Back Bay home, Kate thought about the journey that had brought them here, from ambitious Harvard students to business partners, from passionate young lovers to estranged spouses, and now to this undefined territory where truth and reconciliation might yet be possible. The road ahead would not be easy. Rich's illness would progress, bringing new challenges and sorrows. Kate's leadership at MVP would continue to face scrutiny in light of her newly acknowledged contributions. Their family would expand with the arrival of Olivia's child, bringing joy tinged with the knowledge of Rich's limited time. But for tonight, for this moment, they had chosen to face these challenges together, not as the CEO and his supportive wife, not as patient and caregiver, but as Kate and Rich, partners in a journey neither had anticipated, but both were now committed to navigating with honesty and grace. Some detours, it seemed, led not back to familiar territory, but to new landscapes altogether, places where old wounds could begin to heal and new understandings might take root. For Kate Morgan, this unexpected path felt not like a compromise or resignation, but like a conscious choice to honor both her hard-won independence and the complex love that had shaped her life. As they entered their home together, the divorce papers remained unsigned in Kate's desk drawer, neither forgotten nor imminent, but set aside as they wrote a different ending to their story than either had imagined possible. Sometimes life brings us to crossroads we never saw coming. For Kate and Rich, the empire they built had come at the cost of what mattered most, the truth of who they were together, before ambition and compromise rewrote their story. $3 billion, 25 years of marriage, two brilliant minds that once worked as one. In the shadow of mortality, they discovered what successful people rarely admit, that power built on silence carries its own sentence. That recognition, when it finally comes, arrives with both healing and pain, that some debts can never be fully repaid, only acknowledged. The unsigned divorce papers remained in the desk drawer, not forgotten, but no longer urgent. The company would continue, now bearing both their fingerprints. Their grandchild would be born into spring, carrying forward something neither success nor failure could erase. They had started as equals, drifted into something broken, and found their way to something new, not perfect, but honest at last. Perhaps that's all any of us can hope for in the end, not to rewrite our stories, but to finally tell them true. What price would you pay to reclaim your voice after years of silence? What would you forgive if tomorrow was no longer guaranteed?